Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmius, und beruchnis. I hope everyone is strong, healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. This week was Gimel Tammuz, the Yemei Lula, the 30th Yemei Lula of the Rebbe. This week in Mitzvah Hashem is going to be with Beis Tammuz, so we're in between very, very lofty, auspicious days. Beis Tammuz was the Chag HaGeula and the birthday of the previous Rebbe. We have special days. We have to plug in, draw into ourselves the energy, and learn lessons and absorb it properly in order to be inspired and serve Hashem with more enthusiasm, more life, and more spirit. As usual, these days, since the war started, we added to Tzedakah, Gdei Tzedakah Shemakareves Esagula. Hashem should bring Mashiach now. The war should end, and everyone should be healthy. As usual, we'll start with a prayer, and today's prayer is directly associated with what we're going to speak about today, related to the Parsha. And we're going to say the Psukim of Birchas Kohanim. Yivarechecha Adinoi v'yishmerecho. Hashem should bless you and guard you. Yoir Adinoi porev elecho v'choneko. Hashem should illuminate you and you should find grace in Hashem. Yisa Adinoi porev elecho v'yosem l'cho sholem. Hashem should show His face to us and grant us peace. Somewhere Shmiel b'nei Yisrael v'aniyavarachim. This Shabbos, we say that Shabbos is an aliyah. Everything that happens during the week is elevated, and also it's a blessing. My name is Baruch and Kuli Yemim. It's an aliyah. It elevates everything from the previous week, but also we get strength and blessings for the coming week. What is unique about this week's Parsha is that two leaders of the Yidden pass away, two tzaddikim. So that's an amazing, obvious connection to Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz is the Lula of the Rebbe, and this week's Parsha is the passing of Miriam and Aaron. There's another Parsha Vayechi that has Yaakov's passing and Yosef's passing, but that's different, not at the same time, not at the same generation, so to speak. Yaakov passes, that's the leader of one generation, then Yosef passes, and that's already another generation, another leader. In this week's Parsha, we have Miriam and Miriam and Aaron, the three leaders, even though Moshe was the Nasi Adar, but the main three leaders of the Eden were Miriam, Moshe, and Aaron, as we know, and it's also brought down in Rashi this week. There was Miriam, which in her honor was the Be'er Shalmiyam. The Eden were nurtured and fed with water, and Aaron caused the clouds of glory, Anani HaKavod, and Moshe, in his chus, was the man, was the food. Now, first of all, we're going to discuss what is the lesson that we could take for us in relation to Gimel Tammuz concerning the passing of Miriam and Aaron in this week. And we're going to speak today a word from Likutei Sichas Chelik Chav Gimel Chukas Gimel, the third Sicha, which over there comes out a moiridik chiddush. But before we get to that, first let's talk, which I believe, and I don't remember right now offhand, why is it that the clouds of glory, the Anani HaKavod, are in the schus of Aaron, the Mon is in Moshe, and the Be'er Shel Miriam is connected to Miriam, but I'm not getting into that point. Just want to talk about the difference between Moshe and Aaron. Moshe in the end is Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe you could say. And Moshe Rabbeinu, a teacher, is Chanech Lana Pidarkoi. And therefore there were some differences. Moshe had the Zkenim, the Shem Zkenim, and his relation to the Zkenim. Then there was the Rabbonim, the system that Yisro set up with him in Parshas Yisro. And there was a whole Seder of the Shiurim, how Moshe taught. He taught first one group, and they taught another group, etc., etc. So therefore, when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, there is an akuda of, there's differences of how you teach. Mashenki and Aaron represents Avos Yisrael, like we say concerning Chukas, and the Anani HaKavod is connected to Chukas. Chukas represents because Ki B'Chukas Yishavti. And according to the Gemara, what does it mean that we were surrounded by the clouds of glory? And we say, Ruim Kol Yisrael Leisha B'Sukkah Achas. A sukkah represents a makif, which in relation to that level, in contrast to teaching, and a makif embraces and encompasses, it's all encompassing everyone equally. And the whole idea of Aaron, which represents the epitome of Avos Yisrael, is oyeves habriyos. Everybody has that quality, that there's a spark of Hashem in them, and this is what Aaron represents, the idea of chesed and love. Moshe is more the idea of emes. Anyway, so maybe that's why you could say that Nani HaKavod was in schus of Aaron, which represents more of something which is all embracing all equally. And the mun, even though when it came to the mun, everyone got the same amount of mun, but Mozain is more something which is usually more specific. And when it comes to teachers, as a Rabbeinu, it has to become more connected to its chalkas. There's Kenim, there's Rabbonim, etc. Okay, let's talk about the Sikha over there. So the Rebbe asks two major klotz kashas connected to a contrast of what we see in the news, the events that happened after Miriam passed away and after Aaron passed away. After Miriam passed away, the Be'er Shemim stopped, and there was an uproar, and there was complaining, as the parasha talks about. The whole problem with the rock, and Moshe hit the rock, that all came because there was not the Be'er Shel Miriam, and Moshe had to bring back the Be'er Shel Miriam, the water that was there in the schus of Miriam. So when she passed away, it stopped. And we see in the parasha there's an uproar, there's complaining, and then we have to bring back water. But when it comes to the Nani HaKavod, we don't see anywhere that there was a major uproar, that there's no more Nani HaKavod. And we don't see from both sides. We don't see that there's an uproar and a complaining that the Nani HaKavod disappeared. We don't have them anymore. On the other hand, it doesn't say anywhere that they returned, and it was like a major event, and there's a story. It wasn't reported in any of the news, and it's not in the parsha. So the Rebbe says, I'm made to kavod, and here you see the way that I'm not, this could be it's a chiddush of the Rebbe. I didn't learn all the Mefarshim, so I don't know. The Rebbe, based on Pashat words, this we have to go down to the basics. He says, we see, when we talk about the Nani HaKavod, sometimes they're called Nani HaKavod, and sometimes it's called Ananim. And the Rebbe says there were two functions of these clouds. There was an aspect of the cloud where it took care of the tzorachov, the necessities, the needs of Klal Yisrael. We say in English, a utilitarian purpose. It washed the clothes, it straightened the roads. It told us where to go, when to go, Hashem's GPS system. Those are all things related to the necessities, the tzorachim, shelter, protection, etc. Like we say, there's gimel tzorachim, there's three necessities of man, bayis, levush, and mazin. Like for example, we say, a house, garments, and food. So the Ananim provided side the union of levush, who took care of the garments, and side was bayis, it was a shelter. And that's a necessity. But then there's a Nani HaKavod, translated simply clouds of glory. That's not a necessity. That's a luxury. That's royalty. That's because Hashem cherishes us. So therefore, there's like Hashrois, Hashchina, a special cloud of glory, entourage. Like when you have an important person, he has an escort. You know, like for example, when we speak about Hachnasarchim, the Rebbe has a whole beer that we have, Eshel, Achila, Shtia, and Levia. You have food, and then you have to accompany the guest when he finishes his meal. And the Rebbe says why Levia is even greater than Achila, Shtia, because Achila, Shtia is like a necessity. Of course, if there's a guest that's coming to your house, you have to make sure he's well fed. But when you walk him home, when he's finished the meal, then you show you really, really treasure him. And it's really, really something which is valuable and cherished. You don't have to do it. It's not a necessity. But you want to do it because you want to show how special this person is. Same thing's over here. The Nani HaKavod was not about a necessity. The Nani HaKavod was about the Chavivim Yisrael. When we want to bring out how much the Eibishter loves the Yidden and cherishes the Yidden, there was a special, I'm sure, a special Gilei Elokus, which is called Ananya Koved. And this is the basic answer of the Rebbe. It answers both questions. The reason why we don't see no complaining and no uproar when the Ananim left is because when it says that Anania Koved, when it says that Ananim left in the Schus of Moshe, that's referring to Anania Koved, that left when Aaron was nostalgic. Because we don't need it anymore. It's not a necessity. But the thing that was there as a necessity, Taka never left, according to Rashi, as far as I understand the Sikha. Okay, so that's the basic Nakuda of the Sikha. From that, the Rebbe goes into Nisi Yisrael, a shepherd or a loyal, faithful shepherd never leaves his flock. And he goes into Moshe, that Moshe brought back the Be'er Shel Miriam, because by Miriam, the reason why there was the complaining, to answer the question, the contrast, is because the Mayim is a necessity. He needed water to live, and when Miriam passed away, the water stopped. And therefore Moshe had to bring it back, because that's part of the job description of a Nasi B'Yisrael. He takes care of all the needs of Klal Yisrael. Okay, and this is what the Rebbe talks about in the Sikha, and then the Rebbe says when he get to the Mon, that even after Moshe was nostalgic, the Yidden had Mon. Maybe it didn't fall every day, but in other words, Moshe arranged it that until they went into Eretz Yisrael, they still were able to get Mon after Zion Oder. Maybe it fell on that day for the rest of the time. See the Sikh over there. And the Rebbe learns a lesson concerning Moshe al Zarei Yisrael. I just want to say, I hope I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to now split the difference between Moshe and Aaron. We're talking about tzaddikim, and we see that Aaron affected, and he took care of the fact that there was a nanim that came not only as an Anania Koved, but took care of the necessities, just like Miriam took care of the necessities as long as she was alive. The water, Be'er Shel Miriam, was because of Miriam. And the Ananim, which was there as the necessities, was also there because of Aaron. And then after Miriam passes away, the Be'er Shel Miriam came back because of Moshe. But the Nukuda is that we see from this is that the Ananim that took care of the Yidden stayed the whole time. Not that it even went away for a second. And here we see that even if Aaron passes away, but when he took care of the Yidden, that's on the level that they need it, then it's there for sure. And al derech zeh l'gabe Moshe Rabbeinu Nesiderenu, for sure, whatever is the needs is to be taken care of. And this is the lesson after Gimel Tammuz that we have to know. And look at the Sikha over there, which that Sikha was said before Gimel Tammuz Nun Daled. The Ashgacha Pratis, the Parshas Chukas, many years, Gimel Tammuz falls in Parshas Chukas, is to teach us this lesson, that we have two tzaddikim that pass away in Parshas Chukas. And what does it speak about in Parshas Chukas? The impact and the influence of tzaddikim gemurim that they have on the nation. In other words, you can say in general, every single Yid was affected by Miriam, because every single Yid needed water. Every single Yid was affected by Aaron, because they were all protected, etc., whatever the Anania Koved did. And every single Yid was affected by Moshe Rabbeinu, mitzad the mon, that the food came b'schus Moshe. Besides for everything else, what does a Nasi Ader mean? That he is your neshama, he is your yechida. I'm just saying, over here we see from this week's parsha the idea that these greatest tzaddikim, on a simple physical level, impacted every single Yid bar none. When it came to the food, water, and home. Okay, so that's one lesson we take from Parshas Chukas. Now, since in this week's parsha it speaks about the Istalkos of Aaron, there's something which not too many people have spoken about this year, but the Rebbe spoke about it when the Rebbe explained Kapitel Kuf Chof Gimel, the Rebbe's kapitel for this year, when it was the Rebbe Rashab's 122nd birthday in Tofshin Mem Gimel, Parshas Vayera, if I remember correctly. So there's something that the Rebbe said then, and I don't believe I'm hearing it enough, and we have to live with it the whole year. Because the Rebbe said it then, and the Rebbe said it in another place in general, that the Naya Kapitel from the Siderenu, the new Kapitel of the Rebbe, is an avoid of the whole year. The number 123, 123, the Rambam mentions in Mishnah Torah, when he speaks about Halalukas, and he says the number is 123, Kishnoisov Shel Aaron. Aaron passed away when he was 123 years old. And the Rebbe in Tafshin Mem Gimel, when he spoke about the Rebbe Rashab's 122nd birthday, he said a hira from the idea that it's Kishnoisov Shel Aaron. So now I'm saying the same thing. My friends, we're in Shnas Kuf Chav Gimel in the Rebbe's 123rd year. He's saying Kapitel Kuf Chav Gimel. The Rebbe's 122. That means Gufe Bosaresha Ozel, the entire generation is kochen sich in 1, 2, 3. And what is that? Shnei Sof Shel Aaron. Our Avos Yisrael right now has to be higher, greater, deeper, broader than all the other previous years. Because the entire year is a year of Avos Yisrael. Kachi Shnei Sof Shel Aaron. This is where the amount that Aaron lived. And the Rebbe says, what's Aaron? Oyev Sabrius Umakarvan L'Teiro. Straight away when we say Aaron, we think about Avos Yisrael. And this is also connected to this week's Parsha, Chukas. The Rebbe has a moedidik pshat about a certain phenomenon that we find by Aaron. Where is Aaron buried? What does the pasuk say? Hoir hahar. What does it mean, Hoir hahar? Hoir hahar is translated Mount Hor. Hoir hahar means the name of the mountain, Mount Hor. That's what it literally means. So that mountain was called Hoir. But why was it called Hoir hahar? Because Taka Begashmis, that mountain had another mountain on top of it. There was a mountain, and on top of the mountain was a smaller mountain. Like Rashi says. What is the lesson in Avodas Hashem? Why is it that Aaron was buried in a mountain, which is Hoir hahar? And by the way, this is very important to remember, that actually there's only 3 mountains, and it's brought out that there are only 3 mountains that were not leveled through the Anani HaKavod, talking about what the Anani HaKavod did, that it straightened the path, made it smooth for the Yidden to travel in all the years that they were in the Midbar. And it says there were 3 mountains that were not flattened, not made, in a way that we could travel there. Har Nevoy, Hoir hahar, and Har Sinai. Har Nevoy, because Moshe was buried there in a special place. Har Sinai for Matan Torah, and Hoir hahar for Aaron. Comes the Rebbe and says, what's Hoir hahar? So we go back to a word that the Rebbe spoke many times, that we were given the Torah on Har Sinai, the Mochach Mikol Turya. What do we see by Har Sinai? A paradox, a fusion, a balance. What's a Yid? A Yid has to be, on the one hand, like a mountain. I'm a Jew and I'm proud. But it has to be the smallest mountain. We have to have humility. When it comes to the Eibishter, we have to know I'm completely a loyal subject. Nasa kodim l'nishma. I live my life in service. I live my life in public service. Humility is the most important virtue. Me'oid, me'oid. It doesn't say it once, twice. You should be exceedingly humble. And as explained completely in Chassidus throughout, all in all, that the whole purpose of the Baal Shem Tov and Teres Chassidus, as the Tzemach Tzedek brings in Derech Tzesecha Mitzvahs Achdus Hashem, was to take the Ani, Aleph Nun Yud, and make it Ayin. Take the ego and make it nothingness, which through that you become greater. But that's not why you're doing it. It's because that's the path. And you'll have a better life because of that. You're not stuck in your preconceived notions, in your insecurities, in your egos. in your problems, you transcend. You could say that bittul means transcendence. So number one, what makes Yiddishkeit different than everyone else? Why did we get the Torah? Because we said Nasa koidim l'nishma. We're different than everyone else. That shows on the idea of humility to Hashem. But at the same time, we need to be a mountain. What is Yiddishkeit? And this is one of the main themes of Yid-Beis Tammuz that the Friedrich Rebbe taught us, and he said in his name of his father, Yiddishkeit means azo unit andish. We're not budging an inch. If we have principles, if we have values, it's not wishy-washy. It's not based on my whim or whimsy. It's not based on the fad. It's not based on what's in and what's out. It's not based on what's fashionable. It's not based on winning more, votes. A popularity contest. It's about truth. Truth. Emes is the chemes, and truth doesn't change. And that's why the Torah had to be given in a mountain. A Yid has to know that he has to be like Oz Kanemer, Giber Kari. The Avodas Hashem has to be like Vayigbal Libo V'Darkei Hashem. You can go in the schus of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And with their powers, Kimereish Tzurim Arenu, Umigvoyis Asherenu, when you're standing on top of the cliffs, you're like a cliff, and nothing will budge you. Now comes the Rebbe and says on top of that, but wait up, listen to this. That's true about the whole Torah. But when it comes to Avas Yisrael, you have to be like a double mountain. That means the conviction, the strength, the power, the intensity, the invincibility of your Avos Yisrael is double than what we usually say about the rest of Torah mitzvahs. Wow, such an unbelievable hero from the Rebbe. And this proves to us that Avos Yisrael is the mitzvah Avos Betvei. Avos Yisrael is the beginning, Avos Yisrael is the middle, Avos Yisrael is the end. Avos Yisrael is Kol HaTorah Kula. And that's why Aaron was buried in Hoir HaOr to teach us that lesson. When it comes to Avos Yisrael overrides everything else and is the most important principle. Machshavten Shel Yisrael Kodmel Chol Dover. What a lesson, and what a demonstrative manner. And Lekutei Sichos Chili Beis Ba'alischa, the Rebbe speaks about Aaron, and he said, Azoy is euch given der Weg von der Rabbeim Nesim, that this was the path of all the Chabad Nesim, the leaders, that not only was the end connected to Ava, but the path to it. Torah, the Recher Darchin Loyim V'Darkei Sholem. Always have that in mind. Always you think of that as an objective. That this was the path of all the Rabbeim. Bis Krei Kedush Merich Ad Midbar Lula V'Ad Bechlal. Till the previous Rebbe's way, V'Ad Bechlal, which means he's including himself. Was there Arbeit is given uns in the Neres. And this is what Aaron's path was, to kindle all the candles. And this is the lesson that we have to take. The immediate Torah from Gimel Tammuz. And from this week's Parsha, Hoir HaOr, that how much we're doing in the Kav of Avos Yisrael and Stokka and Chesed. We have to double it. Think in terms of double. Whatever you're doing now, think in terms of double. So the Rebbe should help. This should be the last Gimel Tammuz that we're in Golus. Mashiach should come take it from Yad Mamish. And I want to wish you a good Shabbos and a pleasant Chag Agula for Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, that we should really be b'schus, our enhancing of our Avos Yisrael in the way of Hoir HaOr, double. This should bring about the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, take it from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.